welcome to the session, Andre. Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think we'll start the recording.
Okay, that would be good.
Thank you.
I'll share my screen. Let me know if you can see it.
Yes, Andre, we are able to see your screen.
Okay, thank you. Well, today I will talk about the global address book in finance and operations. Check. I have to go to the next slide. Yes, now it's working. Today in the agenda, I will first give an introduction myself, bit short, talk about the conceptual model of parties in Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, which is all built up for the global address book in the system. A bit of the history, what happened in the previous versions of AX until what we have now with the global address book. So talk about the current version as well. I will talk about a feature related to the global address book, which is called an address books. I will explain that one as well. A bit of showing some of the feature highlights, what's more in the application, and share some more thoughts at the end of the presentation. Quickly, my name is André Arnaud de Calafon. Since 2013, Microsoft MVP Awards. I got that one from Microsoft, consecutive, so I'm quite proud of that. And currently working as product owner, solution architect at To Increase. There are some contact details. So if you quickly want to make a screenshot, that would be okay. Otherwise, I can also share it later in the meeting chat. First, an introduction of what is the global address book in the application. In fact, it will store all parties, and a party can be a person or an organization in one central place, and it will have some shared information like address details and contact details. But there's a bit more. I will explain it on the next slide. Each of the address book records, the party, can have different roles, and the different roles can be also in different companies. So a global address book can be a global address book, and a party can be a customer or a vendor or maybe a contact, but also more specific, it could be a customer in the USMF company or maybe a vendor in the DEMF company. And it's not only about just being able to store some organizations and contact persons, but also in the global address book, there's some space for a legal entity, operating units, teams, and individual system users. That's all stored in one single place. Bit of conceptual model. I will start at the left middle with the party. The party concept itself, mainly you can divide it into an organization, which is a company or a person, and a person could be a contact person for an organization, but also it could be one of your own employees. And each of the parties can play a role or multiple roles in the application as being a customer in one of the legal entities or more, or a competitor or contact person, but there might be some more entities because not everything was just on top of my mind, and there's also not that much space. When looking at the parties, you can make also relationships between the organizations. In that way, you can create a kind of hierarchy for an enterprise, showing what is the mother company and what are the child companies, but that can be just not only the one level, you can make more relations. However, you can make the relations, but there's no visualization out of the box. Now we go, if you follow the line of the party to the right, each party can have one or more locations, and each location in the application that could be referring to a postal address or also contact information like a phone number, an email address, or a website URL. On the location level, there are also some registration ideas, and the registration ideas are also used, for example, for the tax information. Now, if you look at the location, which can store the postal address, then from quotations, sales orders, invoices, but also other transactions, there might be also a reference to the location. In that way, it would know what would be the postal address to be used, for example, on a sales order or for the delivery of the goods, or where do we need to send the invoice to. Now, just a bit one topic I did not touch here, that's an address book. Each party can be tagged with one or more address books. Tag, as I also consider it as tags. You can make a deviation for this party belongs to a particular group of organizations. So you can tag it with, for example, an Amsterdam region, or for a store, or for Paris, or you can also make an address book selection based on legal entities. It's just an own grouping, but I will show that one later as well in a demo. Before jumping into the history, I will quickly show you in the application the global address book. The global address book itself is in the common menu. And not all persons do have automatically access to this global address book form in the application. You can use the security diagnostics to check which roles to have access, and if you would like to change the behavior for the security, of course you can customize or configure security so other roles and people get access to this form. Now in this form, you'd see a lot of parties. Initially, the concept of address books, we do have a lot of address books here in this application. Initially, this is used as a filter. So if you would like to focus only on Amsterdam, select. That will limit the number of records to focus on which are the parties related to the Amsterdam address book. If we would select another one, we get another list. For some details, if we go into the details for the global address book, we see that indeed this has a central place for the addresses, but also for contact information. And if we scroll further down, we can also see relationships, and the relationships that would make the hierarchy. It would be possible to add some relationships, but I will not do that in the sake of time for this demo. And at the bottom, you can see also for this party, what are the roles in the different legal entities. This could be a vendor in DMF, USMF. So we can also see where exactly do we use this single party. Back to the slide deck. The history, well, if we look at until Microsoft Dynamics AX 4.0, starting already with the first version, then all data related to addresses and contact details were stored in different entity tables, like the customer table, the vendor table, or an employee table. That would imply that if we have a lot of overlapping scenarios, like a person is also a vendor or a customer is also a vendor, then the name, address, and contact details were stored together with each of the customers or vendors, which would have a lot of data in the application. Imagine that there would be just a movement, an address change for a particular person or an organization, then you would probably forget about updating them all. So it was error prone. Now, with Microsoft Dynamics AX 2009, Microsoft started introducing a table called the Dear Party table. And each of the customers, vendors, and employees and other areas in the application had a link to the Dear Party table as the global address book records. But still, at that time, the Dear Party has its address. Also, the customer, vendors, etc., still had their own address storage. So there was still redundancy of data. However, when you did change a particular address, it was also just trying to update the address at the other side as well. But still, there was potential for some errors in the application. When looking at the current version as of AX 2012, Microsoft just completed the work on it. Now all the information about just the duplicate fields tables and the synchronization has been removed. It's all now in the global address book with what I showed in the first slide, a location concept which would store the addresses and contact details all in one single table. And there will be only a reference which, for example, address would be a primary address for each of the legal entities where the party can play a particular role as a customer, for example. In the past, there was also a virtual company concept where you could set up some sharing of data for addresses and contacts. That is not available or required anymore for the addresses because it's all stored and it's just a reference to an address which is in a global table. So Microsoft worked on a kind of database normalization to just also reduce the size and improve the performance of the application when working with parties, addresses, and contact details. So if we had the option to use virtual companies in the past, where you could just restrict or share data, the virtual companies was also kind of data isolation, but also sharing, mostly used for sharing part. Microsoft introduced the address books, which I just quickly showed a small introduction by just filtering all parties on the address book with a tag of Amsterdam. The purpose of that is using it for retail channels in the application. So the POS integration will know which customers, for example, would be needed to send over to which exact stores, so they would know their customers. And that's also the reason why you can add more than one address book tag to a single party, as one customer can be, for example, a customer and visiting more stores. Also, in AX 2012, Microsoft introduced a global address book security, where you could link teams to address books, and each team had team members. In that way, you could limit which persons in finance operations can see what parties, but that was also inherited to customers and vendors. Now, in Dynamics 365, Microsoft did not or not yet move it to Dynamics 365, and I created an intermediate solution myself. And usually when I check or just talk about the global address book or in public or in my company, I'm checking, hey, what's the status done by Microsoft? And I just found out that Microsoft made a comment that an idea created by David Moody in the past has been set to rejected. So I sent an email but did not get any reply because I would like to get some more clarity from Microsoft if they do still have intentions to move it in the future or not. However, if you are familiar with the address book security concept in AX 2012 and you would like to use it again, you can visit my blog where I wrote about the reinstating of the global address book security. I created some objects to make it available with just working as it was in AX 2012. A small difference, but I will also quickly show that. And you can download objects to get started, and based on the needs, you can add or remove certain tables which would act on that address book security or not. And quickly, if you go to my blog, then it will just talk about what was there in the past, which was a setup for the global address book security, where you could enable and secure by legal entity or enable secure by address book. In the background, it did enable security policies based on the Extensible Data Security, or short XDS framework. Now, just changing that behavior on runtime is not possible. That's the reason why Microsoft did not move it to finance and operations, because they have to do some homework to be able to let users configure and enable or disable the policies on runtime. But as Microsoft did split Visual Studio and the application, that concept of what they had is not possible anymore. So what I did do in my concept, I provided all security policies which were there, and just not enabled. If you would like to enable scenarios for a particular customer, it would be possible to just enable policies related to the secure by legal entity or the policies related to secure by address book. If you continue further, then there's some more information about it, and you can also download objects. And fun fact is that since I did publish this blog post, on average once a week, this feature is downloaded. So that would imply that there's really a need for the global address book security also in Dynamics 365. Just a quick demo of it, then I have to switch to another session with another user. I'm logged in as Benjamin here, and Benjamin is just seeing 3 vendors. And when I go to my own environment, with my own system administrator rights, when I go to accounts payable, all vendors, in the DMF company, same company, I do see more vendors. Now what did we do here? Each vendor, or also already on the party, do have information about the address books. When we browse to the organization administration and go to the address books, oh, that's the wrong one. Address books. Here we have the definition of Amsterdam, Annapolis, all address books of the tags we would like to have in the application, and for each address book we can assign selected teams. Now this has an NLD accountant team assigned to Amsterdam. If we go to the teams concept, where I also have the NLD accountant, we see that there are some persons, including Benjamin, assigned to this team, and in that way it has the link Benjamin is restricted to see only the address books for Amsterdam. Going back to the PowerPoint slide. Some other features in the application. Just part of the application, Microsoft comes with some default data in the application. So it has already a list for all countries based on an ISO format, or just ISO definition, including all translations. Microsoft did try to also support all address formats of all different countries in the application, but sometimes you might need to make new or make some adjustments to them. And there are also address roles in the application. And each address in the application can be tagged with multiple roles, and the roles would be, for example, indicating if the address will be used for a delivery or an alternative delivery address or for invoicing, or if it's just the standard business address. And just like the parties, the addresses can have more than just one tag. So one address can have multiple roles together. Also from the global address book, you can create, for example, if you have one party, create a new customer or a new vendor out of it. There's also an option in the application to do some duplicate checks. So if you would like to check what parties are just duplicated in the system because people did create new vendors and did not pay attention if the party was already in the application, the duplicate check can be performed, but also there's an additional duplicate check on a DUNS number, and that's a Dun and Bradstreet number sequence, which is provided by Dun and Bradstreet and would make a company or organization unique throughout the world. Not everyone is using that, but the application does support it. If there's any duplicates found, there's an option to merge the parties in the application. And also, if you have a particular customer, you would like to change the party, there's also possible to form on the customers and the vendors to change the party association. I wrote a blog about it, and at the end, one of the slides, I also have a link to the blog which shows that option, how to use the change party association. And a quick introduction to the duplicate check. I go back to my application. Now, if we are on this form, and quite one obvious, we do have 2 times the accessories network, and the experience is a bit different compared to duplicate check for organizations and persons. I'll show the persons also quite shortly after this one. But on the party menu, there's an option to check for duplicates, and we can check for duplicates based on name or email addresses, state, and some other information. The options are fixed, limited. It could be customized if you have some more attributes to check on. Now, if we just purely search on the name, in that case, it finds 2 different records, which as far as network and also, again, the same name. But we can also do an additional check on the name and the city together. And in that case, it will not find the second one, as apparently there's or no address or there's a difference in the city. Now, in case we have a duplicate, there's also possible to mark records which we would like to merge, and that's not limited to only 2 records, but you can also merge 2, 3, or one use case I have seen in the past, 400 duplicates. That was really exceptional. And if you select more than 1 record, the merge records option becomes available. Then you can choose which party would be the main one to keep. And this will give some more information about the address, but also where it's used in the application. If you look at the second one, it does not have an address, so it would be more logical to keep the first one. In that case, it will remove the second party and change the party references automatically everywhere in the system where the old party ID was used. I'll not do it this time. If we are on a person in the application and then check for the duplicates, then there's just a difference that you can search on the first name, last name, middle name in addition. but also the last name prefix. So it's not just only the name, but you can also differentiate. I would like to know if there are more errands in the application or not. And obviously, this is not a duplicate in the application. If we continue with the duplicates, when we go to, for example, the vendors, check. If we would like to create a new vendor in the application, then provide a vendor account and start typing the name. If we type, for example, Contoso, and wait for a moment, there will be a lookup of all the parties already in the application. In this case, starting with Contoso. So we have Contoso Asia, China, and we can select which one would we like to link, or if it's, in this case, maybe a complete different one, we can just continue typing and say this is Contoso South Africa, for example. And then there's no duplicate, and we can continue. And by the way, Africa is with a K in Dutch. So, but if we are not fully sure how to write Contoso, is it Contoso or Contasa or whatever, then we can also make some wildcards in it, like question mark as and again a question mark. This will also search for a kind of phonetic option in the application, and we'll give you also the results of everything with Contoso or Contasa, Contese or Contesi. That will all be listed then, and then you can check if there's a duplicate or and choose which one to use, to link, to select, or if you would still like to continue creating a new one. Going back to the slide deck. So I talked about of the feature highlights. I did not show all in the demo. Maybe based on the question later, I can also just highlight some other features as well. But some more thoughts. When you create a new vendor, which I did, if we don't select an existing party, in that case, it will automatically create the dear party record in the background. But also, if you create a new vendor or customer, you have to think of what to select, organization or the person. There is a parameter in the application for customers and vendors. If you create a new customer vendor, what should be the default? Would it be an organization or a person? If you are doing a lot of business to consumer activities, then maybe it would make sense to include just set it as a person. If you made a mistake, also in the blog I share later on another slide, it would be an option with just a simple trick to create a new correct party in the application with the correct type, organization or the person. Then you can go to, for example, the customer and change the party association. In that case, it will also be converted from an organization to a person. Also something to consider, if you do a data conversion from an older AX environment to finance and operations or from an external system, the question is what to do with the party ID. You can use the automatic numbering, but if you are converting from an older AX version, you can also just keep the old party ID and have it a manual range. In that case, you would always have a reference back if you keep the old environment in read-only mode. And as last question, is this master data management? And then my answer is no, this is not master data management. In fact, it is just a central repository to store address, contact, and registration numbers for parties in the application to just reduce the number of data entry and share some data in the application. If you would like to do real master data management, then usually you would like to have an unique record, for example, for a customer, including more details, like maybe a customer group or an payment terms. Maybe per legal entity, you would like to decide what tax group to use, but all those defaults are not available in the global address book. However, coming Monday, I have a demo with one of our solutions, because at 2increase we do have a master data management and data governance suite of products. And over there, we will first import a global customer without any reference in the global address book records, and with a workflow where persons will decide, hey, this is for this type of services or another type of service or a third type of service, or maybe all of them. It will at that time also start workflows to complete the data and move that same party to different legal entities. Then I would like to check if there are any questions in the meeting chat.
Yeah, Andre, I can see there are two questions. I'll just quickly read out. The first question from
Okay.
Mohammed is, can we have a same address for two vendors in a legal entity?
Yes, that is possible. In fact, well, the same address information. However, if you look back at the, I will go back to that slide. No, not this one. Start over. Where is it? Here. If we look at the conceptual model, a party has a location, and the location is unique for each of the parties. Meaning that if you have two different vendors, which are two different parties, they will have their own location. They still can have the same address information, but it's not the same record. So that means that if you have two vendors with the same address, if you need to change the address, then you need to keep in mind that indeed you have to update the address of two different vendors. So there's no link in that case between them.
Understood. I hope that clarifies your point, Mohammed. So we have another question from Shiva, Andre, and he's asking about,
Okay.
can we please elaborate change party association option?
Yes, at least at the last slide, I have a link to a blog I wrote about it, but we do have some time still. Then I can also do a quick demo of it.
Yeah, that would be really helpful, Andre.
Okay. Well, let's say I would like to create a new vendor called Max Verstappen, for example. In this case, I do not pay attention, and it will be created as an organization, and I will also provide a group. Now I don't know his real address, but I will just type one of them. And apparently I did not prepare for this question, as it needs to just have a cold start today. But for example, in the Netherlands, there might be an address. Street 23. in Amsterdam. And by the way, if you are using the global address book security, don't forget to also link the address book. Otherwise, it will be visible for all users in the application. So if it's tagged, it will be just secure to only those persons who would have access to. If there's no tag, then everyone can see that party in the application. Now, I made a mistake. It's now an organization, and I intended to have a person in the application. So we can go to the global address book. Here we can create a new party. And now I pay more attention and first select the type of person, which will give me the option to enter the first and the last name. And in fact, what we have to do is also just ensure the addresses will be filled, but I will just forget about it now. So if we now search for Max Verstappen, for example, we see we have two records in the application, but one is of type person and one is of the type organization. We can go back to the vendors. On the vendor details, there's on the general tab an option, and the same is on the customers, change party association. You can now select what will be the new party records. If you open it, you can start filtering for Max, for example, on the name. Select the type of person. And the old reference was to the organization. The new reference will be to the person of this record. Be sure you want to change it. Yes. And now the vendor has been changed, where you would see now the first name, middle name, last name, instead of just one organization name. And just keep in mind that if you do change the party association, also the addresses will be just used from the party which you now linked. So on purpose, I did not enter it to show you that you also have to re-enter the addresses when you do want to change the party association. And now when we change it, it would be possible to just delete the obsolete records, not a real requirement, but to just have clean data in your environment, it would be recommended to change and delete the wrong Max Verstappen. I hope this answered the question from Shivam. And I think I also answered.
Yeah, I think yes. Shiva is saying yes. Thanks for that. There are two more questions, Andre. We'll just quickly try to see what best we can do in next 10 minutes. So one is what happens if we change the party type? Does it create a duplicate record? But I think we saw that, right? So I think
we saw that. Yes. In fact, initially we have duplicate records, and then you can decide to remove the wrong one. Yes.
That's correct. That's it. There's one more question from Chandrasekhar, where he's asking about you just mentioned about master data management, right? So his query is that will the fields on customers and vendors be managed in MDM company and not the locally editable?
Now I have to just switch to just talking about our product shortly. Indeed, we have a master data management suite of solutions. One of the features is also a dynamic field security, where it would be possible to set and limit access on individual fields, also based on conditions. So you can indeed manage then customers and vendors in a master data management company and locally not editable. However, some fields, maybe the text group, might be managed locally, or the dimensions. So then you can set and select on based on what conditions the fields will be locked for editing or will be open for editing.
So there is a
But
follow-up
again, that
question
was
after. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, but again, that's based on our solutions and not in the standard.
Understood. Understood. So in a standard, I think what I can understood from Chandrasekhar question that as a best practice or a recommendation, is it really advisable to have a dedicated legal entity called MDM and then master the data which is required from a master data management perspective and then distribute the data because it is behind the scene, it is connected with a single party or multi-party scenario and then distribute to other legal entity, which are really legal entity where the transactions are happening. What is your thought process on this, Andre?
Well, that depends on the scenarios. If you talk about particular companies with just enterprise with more legal entities, then maybe some legal entities might have complete different activities, may not require the same customers, then may not require the same vendors. In that case, it's not required to have a master data company for that type of businesses. But assuming you have some manufacturing companies in one country and you are sourcing a lot of raw materials from the same vendors, in that case, it might be recommended to just create a kind of template vendor in a master data management company and then indeed copy the information to other legal entities. Other options, just next to our solutions we have, is also using the data management framework to copy into a legal entity or use cross-company data sharing. But those solutions will or not copy all of the details, like the cross-company data sharing can't manage the financial dimensions, and also cross-company data sharing is not working together with dual rights. So in that case, you can consider the copy into a legal entity, but copy into legal entities does not really have a kind of just management around it for approvals, etc. So that we did create some more management around the master data management itself. If you talk about if you talk about products, then maybe indeed a lot of the organizations will use the same products. The global product concept is also, if you look at black and white, it's only about a product number and product name. Also for the products, it might be recommended to have an MDM company with just more information in the basic and then start copying it to other legal entities.
I agree with you, Andre. In fact, with that note, I would like to share my experience in one of our implementation. Initially, we thought because that was a requirement from customer to have a master data management, and they used to manage the MDM information because they are considering all the data from a different application into a third-party solution. And initially, we thought to have a dedicated legal entity, to manage data of customers, vendors. And the idea was that that legal entity will have some process defined, which will behind the scenes start synchronize the data to the actual legal entity. So very similar to the data management framework of AX 2012. But it's a choice, it's a design approach. However, since we are living in a cloud world, the approach is, as you mentioned, if there is a requirement and if that requirement can be fulfilled, not having a dual right sort of thing, then I think it's always recommended to go with some sort of data sharing framework, because that's how the workflows and the data flow activity will work incorrectly rather than maintaining a data. Because when we started dialoguing with the customer, we started to end up with discussion with the auditing, why this MDM required, because it's not a legal entity in the books of account. Do you really require, so on and so forth, right? On top of that, reporting as well, right? So that is where I think when we design and try to fulfill this sort of requirement, I think we need to consider all the aspects. Or if there is no budget constraint, the way you explain, the way to increase as a dedicated solution for master data management, right? So I think those solutions can be looked up to by the customer, right? What do you suggest?
Yes, if we look at what's happening the last 3-4 years, then there's more attention for data quality and master data management, also in ERP systems. And we even had talks with prospects where they said, well, we will not implement our solutions now. We first need to focus on the master data management before we can continue with our ERP system. So that also indicates sometimes that the data is really an issue before they can continue.
I agree with you. Data quality is not the issue. And then if you look at the financial and operation, the way it has a tight data integrity constraint, right? So you cannot have any sort of data which is having a missing link of data integrity, then you will end up with just correcting the data in both the system, right? So I think those sort of aspect needs to be designed or discussed thoroughly with the customer and the data architect from customer side in the designing phase, or maybe in the before design, that is blueprinting phase. That is what I think I can suggest here.
Yep. Just quickly, so about the global address book, there's some information on the internet documented by Microsoft, and also a link to 2 of my blogs. If required, I can also paste them in the meeting chat. I saw another question popping up. I don't think we have time for it now, as we're at the end of the session, I guess. Just reach out to me and I will connect with you to answer that question.
Okay, thanks a lot, Andre. Andre, I would like to add one more thing. Since you have this nice presentation about address book, as well as you wrote a bunch of blogs on these aspects, and the way platform is evolving, the one Dynamics one platform from a cross-app perspective, I think there is also a concept that Microsoft launched in the dual right recently, which is an address book. I think maybe if you can share your thought process through a blog, or maybe in a subsequent session, sometime monthly sessions with our community or other international user groups, that would be really helpful to understand the thought process from your side, Andre.
Correct. That's I did not include the global address book with dual right in my presentation. That's correct. Also because I don't have access to an environment myself, but we do have one at 2 Increase. So I will also just work on that one and maybe indeed improve or create a dedicated session on the dual right in the global address book.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for your kind gesture, Andre. It's always, it's fun to have a discussed dialogue with you and try to learn a lot of things from you in every session. Last year also we learned a lot, and this year also, though this topic is not new to everyone, but the way you try to explain and the way you try to portray the thought process, it's really amazing. No doubt in that.
Okay,
so I think I don't think any further question, Andre. So I think we'll take a pause of 5 minutes if anyone wants to take some break, and maybe we'll rejoin around 10 minutes from now, where Adria is going to help us to understand the service protection API limits from an integration perspective and know-how in the aspects of third-party integrations with the new concept of throttling, right, to avoid the performance challenges and all the stuff. Okay, so thank you very much, Andre, for your time and efforts. Really appreciate for that.
Okay. Thank you, and maybe till next year.
Or maybe in a monthly sessions, Andre. We'll connect.
That's okay. Always good.
Thanks.
Thank you. Tata.